We're going to make sure that American communities are safe. We're going to get American energy dominance going again in the economy and restore common sense. But to do all that in one big bill takes a little bit of time.
Speaker Mike Johnson spills the tea on the ugly process of the congressional bills. This involves all of Trump's tax cuts, whether if they're permanent or temporary, the CR, the continued resolution. I learned a lot in this interview, so I thought I'd pass it on to you. Welcome to the Doug TenNapel channel. I hope you guys have liked this video just by default already. Ding!
I have tremendous respect for Speaker Johnson. I hope the House will move forward soon, but we cannot allow this moment to pass, and we cannot let President Trump's America First agenda stall. One of the things he cites is Borders Czar Tom Homan and the operations that are going on. He says you're going to run out of money for what's going on at the border, so he's not going to wait for the House. He's moving ahead.
Lindsey's a good friend. I have great respect for him as well, and I understand what they're engaging in. They want to move the agenda, and so do we. The President Trump got a mandate to deliver that America First agenda. He's working at breakneck pace, as you just saw in the opening of the show, to do that with the executive branch, and we're going to do it with legislation. So
Lindsey Graham inserts himself and goes, where's the budget? Now, it can either start in the House or the Senate. Lindsey Graham is trying to get it to start in the Senate because they have fewer members to have to deal with. It's a much lower amount of representatives of their government just in that body, but they're less authoritative, and they really aren't the problem. It's the House of Representatives that is the problem. You have so many more politicians representing each state. And remember, that's how you get often that's how you get one of their votes, like, you know, Murkowski out in Alaska or Maine, the liberals out in Maine. You're trying to get their representative vote. That's where all the pork comes in and all the giveaways come in. They have to put those in some kind of a budget that's going to get passed. And Trump asked for the big budget bill, so they can often take little tiny slices and get them to approve it. But to get enough votes, you tend to put stuff in that everyone needs. Just so you know, kind of the process of why it all gets so messy. It is a functioning part of our government. It's a feature, not a bug. It's why things are the way they are. Just so you know, you have to get all of those House of Representatives votes, and so everyone wants something to bring back to their state.
It's a very complicated and complex set of things that we are delivering. Of course, we're going to secure the border. We're going to make sure that American communities are safe. We're going to get American energy dominance going again in the economy and restore common sense. But to do all that in one big bill takes a little bit of time. So we're working through that process very productively.
So that's the big bill. It's getting close. He's going to tell you in this next segment how it's almost ready to present to the public. And by the way, DOJ will expose this whole thing. The DOJ is going to post online on X everything each state is going to get and what each person wants. So this is all going to be public, really, for the first time.
I appreciate the Senate's zeal. We have it in the House as well. But as I reminded my friend Lindsey, I have about 170 additional personalities to deal with, and he's only got 53 on the Republican side there. We have, a very diverse caucus with lots of interest, but we are going to get this job done.
Very diverse caucus, lots of interest, and he has almost, unlike Lindsey Graham, Mike Johnson has very few margin of error.
How do you make the closing message that what you're planning is a better road forward than the Senate?
Well, I talk with the president and his team about this almost constantly, reminding them that we will get the job done, but it has to be the one big bill strategy. And the reason for that is because that gives us the highest probability of success of delivering on all these campaign promises. We will get it done. The president knows that. He's getting a lot of wise counsel, a lot of advice. But at the end of the day, the House has to drive this process, and we will. We're going to get everybody together.
So he's confident they're going to get it together. It's coming down the pipe. It's going to be the big talking point, because the Democrats are going to go nuts on this thing because they are not going to support it whatsoever. We'll hear from Hakeem Jeffries in a minute, too.
Okay, when will we see your framework? Monday, Tuesday?
Well, we were going to do a budget committee markup next week. We might push it a little bit further because the details really matter. Remember that I have the smallest margin in history, about a 2-vote margin currently. So I've got to make sure everyone agrees before we bring the project forward, that final product. And we've got a few more boxes to check, but we're getting very close.
So we know one of the president's priorities, and yours as well, is to extend those tax cuts that were passed in 2017. Here's what Axios says. Extending those for 10 years could cost $4.6 trillion under the current law scoring used by the Congressional Budget Office. So what is more likely? You find enough offsets in spending somewhere to get that number down, or this talk now that maybe those cuts only are extended 5 years?
Well, we're looking for the offsets, and we have to do that. We have to be good financial stewards, because the other concern is that we are growing the national debt. We don't want to add to the deficit by doing this. So it is a very expensive project.
So that's his other big problem is it has to go through the Congressional Budget Office. You'll hear them talk about the CBO, the CBO. That is, anything they propose goes to the Congressional Budget Office. They look at it and say, this is paid for or this is not paid for. Now, why that CBO lied for so many years under Obamacare and under anything Biden's trillions that he spent, the CBO always lied in Democrats' favor. I don't understand it at all. All of their spending went through, but he does still have to get their approval, has to be approved, and official and said, yes, it's all been paid for. You made your proper cuts everywhere else to afford these things in this budget.
And remember, we've got to spend money to secure the border because the Biden administration opened it wide. We've got to make sure defense spending is covered, and then no tax on tips and these other big priorities that the people elected the president to do. So making all that work in the proper equation is where the math and the hard work comes in. But we're going to make sure that we find the offsets to do this in a responsible manner.
So in the meantime, House Democrats say it looks like you're going it alone. They think this is going to be a party line vote, or at least if you can keep your caucus together, and that you're not actually spending any time negotiating with them.
Yeah, because we don't want a bunch of Democrat crap in this bill. So you heard him mention before that he has to deliver on some of Trump's promises and has to get paid for, like the no tax on tips. How are you going to offset that missing projected money in the budget? They have to show up somewhere. How about paying for all the border wall and border security? It has to be paid for, right? So they have to find that money somewhere without cutting Medicare and Medicaid and all those things, or you don't want them cutting the military, things like that. And those are like the biggest parts of the budget. So where does the money come from? And so now, if you can get a Democrat vote or two for Speaker Mike Johnson, it would help him a lot, but he's not going to get it. Usually you don't get any at all. So, because now the Democrats are going to add their pork to this bill. It's going to be like, this is why they always ended up funding Planned Parenthood, because some Democrat would throw that in there and say, I'll vote for all your Republican stuff if you give me this. So each state's going to come in with their pet project to fund, and that's all it's going to cost to get a Democrat's vote. And it's already bad enough trying to get all the Republicans together, but you're going to need 100% of the Republicans if you only have one or two votes as a margin of error.
Republicans haven't said a single thing to House Democrats about finding common ground to get something done on the budget, on their tax cuts for the wealthy, well-off, and well-connected, on their efforts to dramatically end Medicaid as we know it, or on the debt ceiling.
Wow. They're doing the debt ceiling's the other one, because they could always just vote to raise the debt and make it, and that's how you're going to pay for it all, which, by the way, Trump was okay with in his last administration. But you're not going to, if you don't put a ceiling on that, we're about to go insolvent. So there's a lot of pressure, economic pressure against Trump raising the debt limit just to pay for all this wish list of stuff that he's already promised.
We're not dramatically cutting Medicaid, and we're not doing all these things they accuse the Republicans of. We're trying to get the country back on track and restore America's greatness. And it takes some real effort to do it. There will be things that we're doing in a bipartisan fashion, but the reconciliation process, which we're spending all the time on right now, is by design effectively a partisan exercise. They've done it when they had unified government, and we're doing it this way. So there's plenty of time for all the negotiation, and we'll get to that. And, the Democrats, frankly, are flailing right now. They don't have an identified party leader. They don't have a real vision for the party. And the blitz of all the Trump executive actions have them just at a dizzying pace. And so they're flailing right now. I get it. This is politics.
So flailing and reconciliation. Reconciliation it does have some Democrats on the reconciliation board. So you have to, that's like another version of the CBO, the budget. They oversee it. They have to reconcile all these laws, and they rewrite a bunch of them to make sure that they jive and they'll support them. But the bigger thing is that I like is the Democrats have no leadership. They're out in the wilderness. They have nothing right now. They're just floundering. All they know is stop Trump. All they know know is do not vote for, not one vote for this budget will come from them, I predict. Maybe a Fetterman.
So there is a lot to get done in the coming weeks. And part of that is the fact that we're supposed to run out of government funding on March 14th if something doesn't get done. Here is what Congressman Chip Roy, he's a Republican, says about what may happen on that front.
CRs aren't my favorite vehicle, but the idea that we're going to get approaches done by March 14th is, that's pretty low.
So he's thinking the odds aren't good for getting those appropriations done. Continuing resolution, the CR, that Band-Aid, what are the possibilities that that's part of what you have to do to keep things going?
Well, look, all options are on the table right now, but our appropriators have been working in earnest to get that top line number negotiated with the Democrat colleagues, and there's been lots of posturing back and forth, but I think we can get this job done. The appropriators can write the bills quickly enough because a lot of the groundwork, the foundational work, has already been completed. So just getting everyone to agree to what that final spending number is going to be has been the holdup, but we have time. It's early February, and the deadline is March 14th, so there's more to come on that.
So you have the middle of next month is when the government runs out of money and it all shuts down. So they do a thing called a continued resolution, a little cheater called a CR, where they can't pass the full budget. So let's do a 3-month CR. It'll just pay for the government to stay open another 3 months. And they usually keep everything as it was before, just to do a blind green light. Well, there's a lot of guys that are against that. Chip Roy's against that. Thomas Massey's against that. The more fiscal, conservative-minded Rand Paul's against it. The continued resolution. They might hold their nose and vote for it, but usually they're like the last holdouts. What they want is a real budget, and Chip Roy is saying good luck getting that one ready and through by the middle of next month. So just to explain kind of, Mike Johnson has the hardest job in politics right now, managing all these moving parts and trying to get this budget together. And Trump's going, keep my tax cuts for another 10 years. That is beyond my administration. They got to try and get it passed. He's a miracle worker if he can pull that off with a 1-vote majority.
So most of what we've seen in the administration so far has been executive action out of the executive branch. So as you work on the legislative branch, let's talk about that, because many of the president's earliest actions are already tied up in court battles. There are some injunctions there. Erwin Chemerinsky, who's the dean of Berkeley Law School, says this: a stunning number of his executive actions clearly violate the Constitution and federal law. I certainly doubt that any president has done so much lawless so quickly that affects so many people. Now,
I just want to go into that Erwin Chemerinsky, head of Berkeley Law. He's a constitutional scholar and a flaming insane liberal. He's the one that's for expanding the Supreme Court, expanding the number of states, ending the filibuster, anything radical that helps the Democrats he's for. But I've listened to him since about 2001. I used to listen to he on the Hugh Hewitt radio program with John Eastman. Now, John Eastman was named in that Fani Willis case. He's one of the 18 co-defendants. He's also mentioned in the Jack Smith trial where Trump tried to perform an insurrection. The legal theory to back that up came from John Eastman talking about the alternate electors that Pence didn't go for. Just so you know where these guys come from. John Eastman, huge guy. Right now he's working on election integrity in Arizona. John Eastman is. And he used to go and talk and argue, and he's back and forth with Erwin Chemerinsky. I've listened to those guys for like 10 years, and I would read all the legal statements that they made, and I really enjoyed them both. So I think Erwin Chemerinsky used to be at the Chapman College down in Orange County, that conservative law school. Just to give you a little background on where I've heard about this guy for a ton for the last 28 years. So it's kind of neat to see his quote show up here on Fox. But he's ripping on Trump, saying it's all lawless, lawsuits all the way. And so Trump's executive orders, they only go so far, guys. Executive orders stay with the president. They're not put into law. They're an executive order. He only gets a certain amount of time before they go away. If you really want the Trump agenda to stick, you have to pass laws. There's a lot of statements already against the Congress that it's too hard to pass laws, so that they just don't do it anymore because they can't agree on anything. So like for the last 25 years, you've seen presidential powers expand and Congress shrink. This was right around the Boehner-Paul Ryan era. They did not do their job of passing laws. They can't work with the other side. We're getting way too divided now. So that's another problem we have to deal with.
Ideologically, politically, clearly you're in sync with President Trump, but I've known you for years as a constitutional attorney. Are you worried at all? Anything you would voice as concerns, separation separation of powers, what's going on in the executive branch?
Look, I'm a lifelong advocate and guardian of Article 1. There's a reason that the legislative branch is listed first in the Constitution. The founders intended for us to be the ones that, drive the agenda. But the executive branch, the president has a very important role. The Dean is not wrong. President Trump has done more than any president in our memory, probably in the modern era, maybe in the whole history of the country, right out of the gates. Why? Because he knows exactly what he wants to do, what he needs to do, and what the American people gave him a mandate to do. So I'm not uncomfortable with the pace of this. He's fulfilling all of our campaign promises.
What about the substance of it?
Well, the substance is what the American people demand and deserve. This idea, all the controversy about Elon Musk helping us out, they're going through to find efficiencies. There has been massive fraud, waste, and abuse of the American taxpayers' dollars, and this is the best way to do it. You bring in effectively an outside auditor, and that's what Elon and the team are doing. And what they are uncovering is incredible abuses of the public fisc. And so we applaud that. We're supporting it.
So Trump, because he had a mandate with the election, that's why he went out and blew out so many executive orders. And because this is his second time at that bat, he knew to start way ahead of time and had it all ready to go on day one. That's why we did the video on it saying it was going to be shock and awe. No one has prepared that many presidential orders on day one, and he just launched them all. Boom. Some of them they can fight in court all they want. That's kind of normal too. Fine, give it a try. But he only did it because he had the will of the people to instantly roll this stuff out. Well, now you have to get it passed through law, and that's obviously a lot harder to do because it's not just one guy doing it by caveat. Now you need all of these politicians' support. And that sometimes that's bad news for those of us, for MAGA especially, when we're impatient. We're like, why can't it change now? Where's it at now? Your government is not made to do that, to just reform everything now. The real way that it has to be done, like he said in Article 1, the reason why the legislature is named first is it was intended to be done through law. Not through presidential order, by the way.
And we're going to back it up with legislative action to make sure we codify these changes so that it's more lasting than just one administration.
So that's how you make it last beyond the Trump administration. I just thought this was a great overview of all of the budget and law stuff, and that's why I'm bringing it to you. I get educated as I pass this stuff on to you. Thank you all for watching. Leave a comment below if you like this kind of material. I'm Doug in exile.